here. My good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, he's received contributions from 44 billionaires. Pete, on the other hand, is trailing, Pete. You only got 39 billionaires contributing. So, Pete, we look forward to you. I know you're an energetic guy and a competitive guy to see if you can take on Joe on that issue. But what is not, what is
Get your words straight, Jack.
What about the 700 Americans that are dead? Should they not be happy?
Shame me once, shame on me. Shame me once, shame on you. Shame me twice, shame on me.
Politics has gotten just so out of whack, but it's going to come back and whack.
Did a hell of a job of your job.
Welcome to the Postgame of the Michael Brooks Show, here with the whole team, each and every one of you. Welcome, patrons, best people on earth. Ben Burgis is here. Lauren Ashcraft is here. Welcome to the Postgame.
Thank you so much.
Soon to be Congresswoman-elect.
I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, you have any hesitation about living in D.C.?
I mean, my home's going to be still in New York, but I do have some family in the D.C. region, so it'll be nice to see them sometimes.
Absolutely. Love it. New York delegation that is not a pawn of real estate and Wall Street. There's also a lot of stuff to do for Puerto Rico in that New York-Puerto Rico nexus. They're just totally shameful record of people like Joe Crowley.
Yes.
That's definitely one of the stories of how AOC was able to upset him, I think. Let me start with a Discord question or a Discord request. Michael, can we get a Nation of Islam Obama eulogy for Soleimani? That's actually really good. It's like, General Soleimani was, look, first of all, let me be clear. Well, you know, I can never decide. Did I decide the Nation of Islam? Oh, yeah, I did decide he was Shia. Okay. It's like, so, first of all, he had the correct interpretation of Islam. Secondly, he was the Tiger of Tehran. And every time I would hear about an improvised explosive device while I was in the Illinois State Senate, I would have a tear of joy. The same way these devils watch football, I watched this brave, noble soul fight for the dignity of Iran. He's a living martyr. We got to do like a next step of Nation of Islam Obama. Yeah, exactly. Like that really serious, like he has to fly to Iran and beat his like, no, take me. Take me, Allah. Take me instead. This beautiful shining martyr. See why I said you might want to stop sticking postgame? This beautiful shining martyr. I want to get her elected to Congress. And she's standing next to me while I do this fucking nonsense. This beautiful, please take me instead. Wallah, why? Waiting for the Mahdi to return. That's awesome. like Ahmadinejad's Twitter account, where he's just like, he does like the like, he'll be like, you know, he makes like these very like almost like 1960s style, like kind of like the verbiage is sort of, but he'll do like a shout out for like, Huey was assassinated, yes, because he wanted to educate the oppressed. #CIA. Like, yeah, that's true. No, I can't say. I need to censor myself.
No, good.
Okay,
Go.
Oh, but the details are irrelevant.
Yes, the details are irrelevant. No, look, I'm trying. No, like if you took like a U.S. general that actually was like willing to go into the field, right? There's nothing really comparable to this guy, but like somehow like. Well, let me do Russia, because everybody's obsessed with Russia. Say there was like some really physically courageous, unusually effective U.S. general, and they got assassinated by like some obese guy from like St. Petersburg who like inherited a bunch of buildings from his dad and like the Russian mafia, and like was primarily known for hosting like Miss Moscow. Wouldn't that just be like basically offensive on a human level? Like it's just like Donald Trump gets to assassinate this guy. That's so ridiculous. If Donald Trump had to do that guy's schedule for one day, he would collapse within like 30 seconds. I'm great. I'm great at organizing fighters. I'm so good. I can't breathe. He's sitting at Mar-a-Lago talking to like the head of a regional Hooters chain, being like, and so I gave the order and we did it. That's happening right now.
The one way to run hypotheticals like that is a way that I don't think like the war powers would want us to, which is that, you know how they talk about how there's all these Iranians ready to celebrate this assassination? I mean, it only makes sense if you look at it through the valence of like, well, what if Iran killed Dick Cheney or someone like that? It's true that Americans would, frankly, I mean, I'd be happy that night.
Most people would not, but you know what's funny is that most people would not be. There would absolutely be a rally around the flag. It would actually be like a small group of total weirdos, Matt, who would just as in the Iran case, which is like basically what they were saying. Basically what they're saying when they say that is they're just like, there's this weird political sect that fought with Saddam Hussein in the 1980s while he was using chemical weapons on us, that have paid everybody from Rudy Giuliani to Howard Dean to lobby for them while they work on covert operations for the Israelis. And they would cheer about that. Yeah. They are universally MEK hated in Iran.
And it all.
Some Iraqis celebrated, and they celebrated for the same reason that they would celebrate other scenarios, which is they want other people from other countries to get the fuck out. Because, sorry to say to some people, they are not in a no borders world mindset. Yeah. They'd like their borders to be respected.
Yeah, no, and, right, which, like,
right.
I mean, this is, a lot of national liberation struggles around the world are being fought for the imposition of new borders, which I think, if you want to be thoughtful about this, should at least make you hesitate about how you talk about that issue.
Absolutely,
right?
Of course.
It's one thing to say we want demilitarized borders,
right.
etc.
Absolutely.
But like no borders sounds very radical, but think harder. But yeah, I mean, it is also worth pointing out because other than, I know that some people, former President Obama apparently really admired, Soleimani.
Can I have a little bit more grieving music, please?
But I think it really is worth pointing this out because what the warmongers really want to do is to say, hey, either you're okay with this, right? And, you're all for this bizarre, dangerous act of like pirate-like international escalation, or you support, the Islamic Republic, which
which I do.
Sure.
Sorry, no, I don't. Sorry. Vote for Lauren.
Which and they can get a lot of mileage out of that, as they say, that locks up gay people, that does this and that,
Right. Absolutely.
And the thing is, though, not only are you not confronted with that choice, but the opposite is closer to the case, because if there's at a time when actually there are a lot of protests, have been, right? Lots of protests in Iran, lots of, grassroots efforts there against the regime, there's nothing that you could do to bolster support for the government more than for the 500-pound gorilla to come in and aggressively.
And one that has been changing your regime since the 1950s and instigating coups and supporting assassinations. I mean,
like continuously for the last 60 years aggressing against you. Nothing could get Iranians to band together and forget their differences more than a new threat from that country.
Yeah, of course. Just give me a touch more grieving music, then we'll get to bad. Just a touch more. Well, first of all, because I like it. There's a theory that some people have that I've converted to Islam.
Yeah.
Totally. You have the courage of a lion and the heart of a lamb. That's brave, noble brother. Allahu Akbar. And it's your guess as to how much that impersonation speaks for me. All right, I'm having too much fun. Let's go to the bad. Lauren, you need to lead us through this bad. This is very important.
Yes.
But we'll play it in a second. First, of course, we have our opening. And can we put this on speaker, I guess? Because they don't have their headphones on. So we'll just do speakers.
But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good. No good, really bad for you. But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
Really?
Believe me, not good. So you mentioned actually in the last segment some of your family background and how it reflected in your commitments in your politics. I want to just say, I absolutely think that a pre-decline Joe Biden would be a very formidable candidate. And I think it has been a major mistake of a lot of people on the left to project our disdain for him, which there's a million, credit card bill and Iraq. And the guy has just any number of bad politics, the drug war, all on and on and on and on. Honestly, it's like you hesitate to say anything almost because it's like, oh, well, you didn't mention the hundreds of other bad policies the guy was involved in. However, he's popular and he does have a brand that works for a fair amount of people. And I have I've always thought from the beginning, I thought this was a Sanders versus Biden race. And it does not surprise me that even though he's had some real problems, that he has not declined. Now, we'll see what happens. New Hampshire and Iowa look not so good for him, so we'll see. But this is a very formidable candidate and somebody who I think people are too quick to assume would run poorly in a primary or in a general election. Because I think some politics, obviously a lot of politics, just presentation. And this guy has built a bullshit brand as a middle-class populist, even though he has done as much as anybody to hollow out the American working and middle class through his support of every bad trade deal imaginable, all of which Bernie Sanders has opposed. Now, when he says stuff like this, though, this is the part of me that is like, does Joe Biden actually want to be president? And how can anybody with any type of serious analysis think that Donald Trump would not eat this like he, and I'm sorry for the image, eats fast food? Here is Joe Biden talking about coal miners and coding.
I come from a family where, in an area where it's coal mining in Scranton. Anybody who could go down 300 to 3,000 feet in the mine, sure and hell can learn how to program as well. But we don't think of it that way. Even my liberal friends don't think of it that way.
Well, and then our friend Sagar teed off on it, but Lauren. Right.
The correct response.
Yeah.
Right.
So as somebody who has had family members that have died and worked in coal mines, I find this to be extremely offensive. First of all, coal miners are too busy working a dangerous job, trying to put food on the table, to learn coding on the side. And second of all, Joe Biden should learn coding if he thinks it's that easy. Just give it a try.
I would start a GoFundMe to watch Joe Biden do coding lessons. And by the way, I say this as somebody who would be a disaster at coding too. So I am saying that as a fellow poor, almost sure to be poor performer. But
also,
I'm horrible at coding.
TMBS listeners, go comment "Learn to Code" on Joe Biden's most recent.
Yes, exactly. That's your social media assignment. Tell Joe Biden to learn to code. And
it's just on a basic, like, you know, like there's a certain kind of like really annoying person who likes to like tell leftists to like learn some economics, right? You know, that like, well, I mean, I took Econ 101 and I seem to remember the first chapter of that textbook was about supply and demand. And so if everybody learns to code,
what would happen?
What would happen to the
if everybody...
market value of that skill? Would it magically create new coding jobs? Or would it just mean that people who did learn to code were, you know, could be paid minimum wage?
Yeah, right.
Well, it just highlights just how very out of touch he is with regular people in his country. And if you think that coding is the solution to every single thing and learning coding is what everyone should just be doing in their spare time, have you ever talked with a coal miner? Have you talked with anyone in the Midwest or the coal and steel country? Have you talked to anyone recently? I don't get it.
I'm sure he's talked to them, David.
I mean, I would just add that, you know, this whole, you know, Joe Biden and also the whole mantra of like trying to encourage people to code. It's another great example of saying like, hey, we have economic problems in this country. Let's just shift things around and create another crisis in another industry, right? So if we just create a bunch of coders, then you have the same kind of problem that you have in the first place. And that's why, you know, people like Joe Biden historically, and we're seeing it again as they start to pursue, you know, the future, are going to do the exact same thing, mistake after mistake.
Absolutely. And I just want to be really clear here. I mean, the contempt that is expressed in this and the delusion that is expressed in this is the stuff of, it is just, oh, okay, there's my campaign ad. Like, I will bill out that ad. I can put some ominous music under it. I could put some clownish music under it. And I can say, Joe Biden thinks you're an idiot. And that's it.
What this does is it invites
complete
Trump
slam dunk
to be able to put out the same kind of ads that Obama was doing about Romney in 2012.
That's exactly right.
Where like you have interviews with laid off workers in the ad, you know, that like, this is what Bain Capital did to us. Like, well, the vice president thinks I should learn to code, I guess, you know?
Yeah,
like,
show a guy with 3 missing fingers that he should learn to code.
Yeah, it's like it might be easier to learn if I still had my hands from work. And I think
not to mention that just on a really basic level, like, okay, let's say the laid off coal miner does go to like a coding class, like at the community college, right? You know, so which graduate of that class is going to get the job first? Like the 19-year-old, right? You know, who does it really quickly, and you know, because they learn really quickly, or like the 46-year-old laid off coal miner, right? You know, like.
Well, they start with an internship at Google and they work their way up.
And they did this.
And it's such an insult to everybody's intelligence to pretend to believe that this is a solution. And it really just shows you that centrists, like, literally don't have a solution. And so they either have to just shut up about this stuff or they have to pretend to think this is going to work.
Right.
Get your words straight, Jack.
They did the same thing, Obama and Biden. They did the same thing throughout like 2014 to 2016 in like coal country too, where they were pushing this jobs retraining program. And it had the exact same problem that you're talking about. People went to school for whatever, 6 months, got their certificate, and then nobody wanted to hire them because they were, you know, 45, 50, and, you know, there was not as much industry in the area. I mean, there's like a myriad of problems that go into the economic issues in that community.
If there's not as much industry in the area, no problem. Just get in the car like a 21st century version of the family from Grapes of Wrath, you know, and just go across the country from city to city, living in tents, looking for where the jobs are. I mean, that's a reasonable way to live, you know, like that's like, what's wrong with that?
And
like,
I know that there's a lot of concern
the price of progress
that will, you know, concern people like, oh, so you oppose education? No. I mean, and honestly, like, I don't even know how to respond to that. Look, in certain ultra limited circumstances, we know people with, well, before you're even in a position where you've had a blue collar job your whole life, people who have degrees, relatively speaking, perform better. It still is not determinative as an example, inheriting wealth. That says way more about where you'll be economically. And the broader philosophical point is we want education for education's sake, and nobody has to live like that because we have enough abundance.
Not for capitalist labor.
Yeah,
for it.
exactly.
Yeah,
but also it's like, your personal advice to your buddy that might be better for, that might work for them, possibly is not how you build a national policy.
No, it doesn't scale up.
Right.
That's, it's the composition fallacy. And frankly, yeah, of course, I'm very much in favor of education. I think that everybody should get to spend 4 years where they, get to take intro to philosophy from me and, all that stuff. But frankly, it's like even right now, the economic benefits are shaky, right? Real for some people.
Absolutely.
But
Drowning
once,
in debt.
Once we get Lauren and a lot of people like Lauren in Congress, and we get President Sanders, and we get free college for all, then what I said about the coded is going to apply there too. The having a 4-year college degree is going to mean a lot less economically, and that's okay. I'm willing to make that trade for everybody getting to do it, but it's something they should do because it's a valuable human experience.
Right.
And making everybody equal, giving them equal opportunity. I just want to say I have anxiety in the thought of Joe Biden and Trump being the two people that debate each other. That just makes makes my skin crawl. It's just gonna be crazy.
There might actually be a push-up contest.
It will be kind of funny.
It would be funny if you forget that it's a competition between who is going to kill us all.
Well, you just ruined it for me. Well, that is a good way to end the bad. But no, I'm somebody who 2016 Bernie Sanders, I think, definitely would have beat Donald Trump. But I also think Joe Biden definitely would have beat Donald Trump. And some of these things are unfortunately not policy and they're presentational, but you can track. And I just think we have to be, I actually find it unpleasant to watch Joe Biden decline. I don't get a joy out of watching, but I'm just saying we need to start being real about this. And if you look at him in 2012 debating Paul Ryan purely on a performance level, it's a diminished figure. And it's shocking to me and grossly irresponsible that people would still think that we should, put him in a general election. Haiti recently marked its Independence Day. We've covered a lot on the show. It's the 216th anniversary of an incredible place. I mean, literally a country born of a slave revolt. And really, as Zizek and I were talking about, the fullest expression of the ideals of the French Revolution. The only reason it goes from a provincial event to a global one is because of what the Haitians achieved. And the Western world, colonialist world, France, the United States, Canada, have been punishing them ever since. But even as we speak, and we've covered this on the show as well, there's still an ongoing uprising in Haiti, and it is one of the core movements of the world today. But I wanted to play a little bit of this. Everybody, I really do think C.L.R. James' Black Jacobins is really one of the most important books you can read.
You can download the PDF for free online too if
yes,
you need it. So.
It's super accessible. And this is a conversation that with Stuart Hall, who we played recently on the show as well, had with C.L.R. James on Black Jacobins in 1986. Jacobin posted this on their YouTube channel. And we're just going to play this and reflect a little bit on the anniversary and then go on.
I mean, people now talk about Black Jacobins as an important historical book, but really, it was also a thesis about contemporary black politics, wasn't it?
It was, and politics that is fundamental is always applicable to different periods of history, because fundamental politics always has behind it the struggle of different classes. Different sections of the class can struggle and kill one another, But that is not much a social event as when one social structure is fighting against another part of the social structure. Certain logical and historical things emerge which are applicable to similar periods 1,000 years before or after.
But what is the significance of Toussaint Louverture for you? I mean, how do you see the connection between those events in Haiti then and the 20th century politics?
I have already said during the last few minutes that any great revolutionary event in history, from it you can always find principles and historical movement ideas that are applied to others. I was saying that before. Now, that is so in any great revolution, and the San Domingo Revolution was the first great revolution of black people. Now, when you consider the role that Africa was going to play in the world in the years to come, that then acquires a significance. Furthermore, it was a part of the French Revolution, so that you have in that historical event a duality in which it takes part in the great revolutions. It's very important. The first was the British, and at the same time, it points the finger to the revolutions among colonial peoples, so that that revolution is something that is worthy of consideration by every type of historian.
I would just really recommend you read that book.
It's a great book.
Yeah. All right, let's. We've got a few more things to get to before we have to end a little bit earlier than we normally end. But let's play this just to honor Barbara Lee. This was an incredible stance of hers to take, and she's also been fighting ever since to get rid of the AUMF, which is still a major construct on what is really just still the war on terrorism. I mean, they retired that rhetoric, but that is the global hegemonic frame, from the Patriot Act to mass surveillance to the drone programs to the complete power of the executive branch to unaccountably wage war across the globe, Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, and this horrifying escalation in Iran. To say this, September 14th, 2001, in that environment, that type of bloodlust, that type of complete uniformity of opinion is stunning. And so we should honor Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, and I want to thank our ranking member and my friend for yielding. Mr. Speaker, members, I rise today really with a very heavy heart, one that is filled with sorrow for the families and the loved ones who were killed and injured this week. Only the most foolish and the most callous would not understand the grief that has really gripped our people and millions across the world. This unspeakable act on the United States has really forced me, however, to rely on my moral compass, my conscience, and my God for direction. September 11th changed the world. Our deepest fears now haunt us. Yet I am convinced that military action will not prevent further acts of international terrorism against the United States. This is a very complex and complicated matter. Now, this resolution will pass, although we all know that the president can wage a war even without it. However difficult this vote may be, some of us must urge the use of restraint. Our country is in a state of mourning. Some of us must say, let's step back for a moment. Let's just pause just for a minute and think through the implications of our actions today, so that this does not spiral out of control. Now, I have agonized over this vote, but I came to grips with it today, and I came to grips with opposing this resolution during the very painful yet very beautiful memorial service. As a member of the clergy so eloquently said, as we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman's
That's
time.
extraordinary. Lauren, when you think about being a congressperson, I mean, I don't know, reflect on that.
So watching her and hearing her words, especially given the timing of when she said this, that takes incredible, and she was so rooted in her morals. And that's exactly how people should enter Congress, knowing exactly what they represent and what they stand for and not deviating from that. So she stood there all alone. She was the only person that voted against this. And if everybody had listened to her, we wouldn't have been able to attack and kill. I think the total is up to 16 people right now through our actions with Iran in the last couple of days. And it's terrifying. And we should never allow something like this AUMF to exist in the future ever again.
Yeah. Thoughts, Ben? And of course, all of the civilians that we've killed in Afghanistan, the longest war we've ever been involved in, possibly about to have a ceasefire, but we don't even know that.
Yeah. Well, at least there's no more terrorism.
Right. I mean, that is true.
We have
I think
that
we
to
have to
console
say
us
that
with,
she
you know,
didn't.
that, like-
The one part of the speech that she was a little off on was the idea that the prob would continue.
Yeah. No,
We've pretty well taken care of international terrorism.
No, I mean it is
Right.
incredibly depressing. Like it's it was a heroic stand that she took, and you know, and that's unlike most things that most people say in Congress. That hits a little closer to the bone every year. That ages really well.
Let's do two more pieces of sound, and then a quick question. I'm not sure. We might have time for a debunk. I'm not sure because we're a little tight. But let's start with this. This is actually great. This is 6 months ago, and we were talking. You know, Megan Day was actually really making the point, and I agree. Look, Bernie Sanders will always come up short compared to your imaginary friend who's running for president. This is a absolutely, there's just no comparable opportunity in modern politics to elect somebody like this. I mean, that's just being simple and reality based. If you care about this stuff, and so we can point to this or that vote that he made, including some legitimate mistakes and so on, but let's be real. And I think with foreign policy, clearly, because, you know, we do remember, I mean, we were joking about this in 2016. Look, Bernie Sanders actually made some incredibly brave stands, including talking about Hillary Clinton hobnobbing with the war criminal Henry Kissinger. However, I mean, you know, yeah, he did have his
Recognizing the humanity of the Palestinians.
recognizing the humanity of the Palestinian people, which, you know, should be obvious, but is still a position of enormous political courage in our twisted political system. However, I mean, you know, but yeah, he did have his like, I want to collaborate with the King of Jordan. Which, by the way, is awesome. I would love to write that screenplay. They were an odd couple. He was a king. He was a grouchy Jewish socialist. Together, they fought ISIS. Like, I see potential there, actually. But he does have actual genuine roots in anti-imperialist, anti-colonial action, which go back to his incredible noble action in the 1980s. And, you know, as Ryan Grimm pointed out on this show, like, yeah, Obama called for, Sanders called for freeing Lula because, you know, Sanders probably knew who Lula was in the 80s. I mean, This is somebody, and of course, you know, other people want to delegitimize, I'm sorry, the fact that he did get arrested fighting for civil rights and was against the war in Vietnam. I mean, these also matter. These also go on the broader record. So but I think this attitude that you see here 6 months ago is really the sign of him actually coming full circle in a great way.
Was President Trump's decision this week to call off that strike the right one?
See, it's like somebody setting a fire to a basket full of paper and then putting it out. He helped create the crisis, and then he stopped the attacks. The idea that we're looking at a president of the United States who, number one, thinks that a war with Iran is something that might be good for this country.
He was just doing a limited strike.
Oh, just a limited strike. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I just didn't know that it's okay to simply attack another country with bombs. Just a limited strike. That's an act of warfare.
Done.
It's not
Done.
wrong.
And in contrast, and what Joe Biden would say, like, I was the one who first thought of the limited strikes, and the Iranians know I am. And they're, oh yeah, Jack. And then Elizabeth Warren would be like, well, I don't know who any of these people are, but I will say whatever the absolutely conventional hawkish consensus is that has been given to me in a briefing, however, Donald Trump's super irresponsible. We shouldn't do it that way. And then Pete Buttigieg is, and this is my speculation here, a agent of the CIA. So, I'm sorry.
If so, makes him the only CIA agent ever to have beaten a Castro. So.
Right. Ooh. By the way, Daniel Bessner, with the Twitter win on that, which is that Bernie should pick Castro as president. As vice president. Oh, God. Raul Castro. Hard cosign on that one.
I think it's been refreshing, one, hearing Bernie talk like that, and two, seeing people push back against the kind of West Wing political pundit class.
Yes.
That their big, thing that they're offended about by this strike was that it didn't go through the proper channels.
Yeah, I think
or even that there wasn't.
No,
like
they really screwed up the press rollout.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't a proper speech or press release, and I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot about how that's pulling that veil back has been so important for a lot of left wing politics. It reminds me of something, not to blow up Matt's game here, but George Orwell wrote in Politics in the English Language, which is, political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wit.
That's it.
And that's exactly, what was going on in that clip. And Bernie's so great at just cutting through that, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Clearly, it's like, this is nonsense.
It's nonsense. By the way, another concept idea, remake of The West Wing with Donald Trump. With like all of
watch that.
I would watch it. Unlike the other West Wing, I would watch I watched a couple episodes of The West Wing, but I like the idea of like how every, and they would all end with like, actually, like it was amazing because it would like Luke Savage pointed out in his articles, like it would basically always end with like, well, basically the Republicans rolled us, but we learned that like, America's America or whatever the fuck, and then the dumb music would come on, and so now it would just like Trump just being like, could you imagine like, but I would like you would have to have like a bunch of people fired and like a group of cretins and sociopaths, but some of that same West Wing, like in the old West Wing, they'd be like, I didn't know, President Bartlett really cares about, and in this one it'd be like, I really did not think that he was going to get the Chinese to give him that duty-free shop at the Malaysian airport. And the music comes on. And Trump's just like, sometimes I sit back in the office and I dream. And I think...
and he's like eating a Whopper.
Yeah, he's eating a Whopper. And the food is just like... And I think maybe if she and I sit down... Ivanka can get a duty-free shop at the Shanghai high-rise. And in exchange, they can...
And they do all the same things, the music, the walk and talks, but like at least 10, 15 minutes of every episode would just be devoted to Trump reminiscing about everybody who was very mean to him at a party in the 80s.
And they would do it like in that dumb, like in the same oh, the president's having a day. It's just like, yeah, the president is remembering when Andy Warhol, tried to, film his girlfriend at the time. And he said no, and he regrets it because that was later sold to the Guggenheim, which totally disrespects him now.
It's very unfair.
Like, what's the president doing? It's like, oh, he's actually trying to explain boat orgies to the Boy Scouts. He needs some help. Remember that one? When he went to the Boy Scouts and kind of was just like, yeah, that was the nightclub era.
Yeah, no, I think that is a first in American history. The Boy Scouts had to apologize for the president's remarks.
That is definitely a one that you got to do. You got to be fair, dude.
Which I guess is why
if Barack Obama went to the Boy Scouts, they're just like, that was when. Everybody knew herpes was bad, but this is before AIDS. Condoms were for losers. So anyways, that's kind of like what you're learning here, to take risks.
Yeah. And that's the big liberal complaint, that the KFAB is in tatters, that we don't have
right.
we don't have a president who can behave himself in front of the Boy Scouts.
I was just like, I'm trying to explain to these kids what Studio 57 meant to me. That's if you did it like it would end up like Ernest. It's like, and I promised, even though my sons were lost causes,
music is swelling in the
I looked at my
background.
daughter and I said, okay, fine.
Music.
I find it really weird that you need to have a husband and have all sorts of weird feelings towards you, which I talk about on Howard Stern. But if you want a duty-free shop at the Kuala Lumpur airport in exchange to selling surveillance technology to a triad connected company, I'll do anything you want. They're just like, wow, I forget that he's really motivated by his family. These shows are all so much better than what they did. The soaring music. Speaking of incompetent far-right leaders, look, I think there was a piece that was just sent to me by two different folks, including one who's a patron, earlier today, or just recently. There was a piece in The Guardian several years ago. I'll get into it more on Tuesday, but like, we have known that Australia will be ground zero for this global ecological crisis. And I want to use beyond the language of climate. When you have animals dying like this, you have people fleeing their homes. This is not, I mean, first of all, in my understanding is that climate change is a Frank Luntz term, that polled is less alarming than global warming. And yes, global warming is not entirely scientifically accurate because it's about weather, broader climate disruption, yada, yada, yada. That's irrelevant to me. I'll value the rhetoric over the accuracy in this case.
Okay.
Or
the
the
climate apocalypse. Can we do that?
Climate apocalypse, or I like
sun traps or carbon dioxide traps heat. So I mean, warming I think makes.
I think
enough
warming
sense.
makes an.
Yeah.
I'm a defender of calling it global warming. I think it makes enough sense, and I also would but again, I like the word ecology. I don't know if it sells as well. We'd have to test it, but I really want it to be underscored that like. You got to get into the ground of people's homes are being flooded. Islands are being destroyed. You look at the Caribbean, the places that contribute to this problem the least are getting affected by it the most. Animals are dying. This is a visceral, serious thing. And of course, the main conflict today, as we've talked about on the show, is between a right-wing politics that will accept this stuff and use it to wage war on migrants and climate refugees and authoritarian politics, and a neoliberalism of Mike Bloomberg, who is going to turn this into a different way of penalizing the poor and concentrating corporate power. But this is people, this is the Australia's Prime Minister, whose name is completely escaping me at the moment. Was it Morrison, I believe? Please double check. I don't know why. It just totally evaporated in my head. I apologize. But he is out. And again, this is a science denying.
Scott Morrison.
Climate denying government, aggressively right wing, extremely xenophobic, abusive towards immigrants and refugees, and terrible on ecology. And here he is being confronted by people.
How are you? I'm only shaking your hand if you give more funding to our RFS. So many people here have lost their homes.
We need some vets. We don't have enough vets.
We need more help.
You won't be getting any votes down here, buddy. You're an idiot. Who votes Liberal around here? Nobody. No Liberal votes. You're out, son. You are out. Good night, Fiona. See you, mate. Bye. Go on, piss off.
What about the people that What about the people who have nowhere to live?
You're not welcome. Go on, get to Kirribilli. We might burn that down.
Thing, you moron.
I don't see Kirribilli burning after the fireworks.
Boomer! This is not fair. We are totally forgotten about down here. Every single time this area has a flood or a fire, we get nothing. If we were Sydney, if we were North Coast, we would be flooded with donations, with urgent emergency relief. Full government!
Scummer! Scummer!
Leadership, Lauren?
Wow. They're just such cowards. Can't you just listen to your constituents for a little bit?
No.
Yeah, they showed up with I think 4 or 5 SUVs and no water or anything.
Right,
like
nothing.
basic provisions that they might need.
Nothing.
And just
At least Trump had the decency to throw people a few rolls
Paper
of
towels, yeah.
I cringe whenever somebody just grabs, he just grabbed her. It's just, it just solidified my opinion.
All right, folks, we will talk more about Australia on Tuesday. Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We need to get you elected to Congress. If they ever use any of the Obama Suleiman material, got your back.
I'm gonna say
You
it.
want to do an Obama Suleiman impression?
No, I'm just really happy that if somebody wants to Oppo research me, they have to subscribe.
You know, you're a fucking genius.
Using up
Get
their
this woman
resources.
elected to Congress. That's exactly right. That is, mwah. Beautiful. That's exactly right. All right, Ben Burgis, give them an argument. A Logic for the Left. And what's the Peterson book?
Myth and Mayhem, a leftist response to Jordan Peterson.
And more news. By the way, on the tmbs.fm, you can see the blurb page for my book, which is coming very soon. It's coming in February. So we'll be talking more about that, obviously, in the coming weeks. Go buy some merch. Go get a ticket to the live show. Spread the word. Tuesday, Drew Mikhael is joining us to talk about how the escalation in Iran by the United States is also going to undermine the emergent movements in places like Lebanon. And then Matt Christman is going to come hang out with us. We'll have some fun with him. And I might jump on more this weekend and talk more about this Iran stuff. There's 2 different very significant things, I guess, that I'm doing later this month that are going to change our schedule up a little bit, but it's all going to be really good content for the show. So you will learn about that more in the coming weeks as well. Appreciate all of you. Happy New Year. See you soon.